Welcome to Winnipeg, and welcome to the first session of BreakOut West 2014. My name is John Kendle. I am, well, someone yesterday introducing me to someone from Vancouver said I was the Nardwuar of Winnipeg, which both frightened and flattered me.
Where's the hat?
Pardon me?
His hat, his signature golf hat.
Absolutely, I don't have the hat, and I'm a little less hyper. But I have been a music journalist in this city for nearly 30 years. Was entertainment editor of the Winnipeg Sun. I ran Uptown Magazine until 2012. Now I run a group of community weekly newspapers, but I still review albums and occasionally concerts for the Winnipeg Free Press. And I guess it's because of those things that I was deemed sufficiently experienced enough to be able to handle this guy on stage. The gentleman to my right, your left, doesn't need much of an introduction, especially in this room and especially after the opening BreakOut West party last night at the West End Cultural Center. But yeah, it was a great show. BreakOut West past president Bob Deeth is indulging himself. He is past president, says he's going to misbehave all weekend. Anyway, back to this, the guy beside me is a 31-year-old Vancouver-based singer-songwriter, and as many, if not all of you know, he first came to national prominence as a Canadian independent musician in 2009 when the song Robots, his album Nice, Nice, Very Nice, exploded onto the Canadian independent music scene, largely through almost incessant airplay from The Verge and from CBC Radio 3. And since then, this guy has gone from strength to strength to strength. His 2011 album, called Oh Fortune, that's a joke between us, earned him a pair of Juno Awards in 2012. Amazingly enough, at 29 years old, he was named Best New Artist at the Juno Awards after making 3 full-length records. Dan has also won 6 Western Canadian Music Awards. He's become one of the top draws on the Canadian concert circuit, and for the last 5-6 years, he's been making steady inroads into Australia, the United Kingdom, the rest of Europe, and the United States. In the past 2 or 3 years, since Oh Fortune came out, he's been an incredibly busy man. He's gotten married, he's started a family, he's been touring an awful lot, he's been writing, he's been recording, and most recently he was, 3 weeks ago I believe it was, you were at the Toronto International Film Festival, and because you and the great Jesse Zubot wrote the score for a movie called Hector and the Search for Happiness, which stars the English comic actor Simon Pegg. So he's gone from playing sort of one-man gigs for 4 people in Smithers to
4 is generous.
Yeah, to hanging out with Hollywood stars. But it has taken Dan a while, and that's the reason we're here. I want to get him to explain his journey, some of the challenges he's faced, how he's overcome them, and perhaps his experience will both encourage and enlighten you in the audience. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dan Mangan.
Thank you for the exceedingly kind introduction, John. That's sweet.
I did forget one thing. Dan's also a record label owner now.
I'm a suit.
Yeah, through Arts and Crafts, he runs a label called Matic, which is essentially a boutique label. Close friends and people whose music inspires you. First artist is Astral Swans, who
That's right, yeah.
Matthew Swan from Calgary, who's here this weekend as well.
Totally.
So anyway, I just want to start in the obvious fashion. I've summarized some of the high points of your career in recent years, but I want to go back to the very beginning, and because you were a teenager and still in high school when you first started playing in a band, and that band was called, interestingly enough, Basement Suite.
Yeah, Basement Suite. It was we used to terrorize the local community centers for $2 cover and cover lots of Nirvana and Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam and stuff like that.
Very cool. How many of you were there?
There were 5 of us.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were just fucking terrible. It was awful, but it was fun. And after high school, everybody else in the band kind of, went off and did other things and traveled to different universities and left Vancouver. And it kind of became all too clear that I was the only one who was actually taking myself seriously, and they were all sort of just there for fun. And it was interesting actually, because my best friend at the time, who was playing guitar in the band, was, it was like this hard conversation where he basically said, like, I don't want this. I know that you want this, but I don't want this. There's other things I want to do with my life that aren't music. And it turned the we of like, let's do this, into, oh, I guess I just have to do this. And that was a hard pill to swallow, but it was really good for me to kind of have to light the fire under my own ass a little bit.
How old were you when that conversation happened? Had you graduated high school?
I think we had. I think that I was probably about 19 or 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you didn't forsake your education, though.
No, it was classic. I mean, I just wanted to go and play music, and all my friends were doing these things that sounded really fun, like going on these 6-month booze fests in Australia, and kind of seemed like this amazing, you can kind of play it off like you're going backpacking and learning about the world, but really you were just going and partying, and that sounded like a lot of fun too. And my parents they basically said, you can do whatever you want. You can be a musician, you can do anything you want to do in the whole world, but just finish university first, because then we can say that we did our part, and then you can do whatever you need to do. And I'm so glad that I did, actually, in the end, because I going to UBC, and I didn't study music, I studied literature, but I read a lot of books that now, in hindsight, I feel like have been massive influencers into how I kind of approach songwriting and stuff like that.
Okay. Music and English literature at the time, and as you say, with the hindsight of 10, 15 years, looking back on it, you may not have felt it at the time, but you were obviously on a path that was leading you to play with language to become a songwriter. Were you writing songs already?
Yeah, and just like I said before, they were just awful. They were like, I don't feel like I was an incredibly natural musician, in the sense that I've met people since who are 20 years old and doing things that I'm amazed by, and that was not me. I feel like I was a really hard worker, and I would kind of figure out what I didn't know how to do, and then I would just like go crazy trying to obsess about trying to get better at that. And I can't even read music. Like I'm still not a really well-trained musician, and I'm surrounded in my band by people who have all been to jazz school or music school of some kind, and their understanding of what's going on in a sort of more mathematical sense is way beyond what I'm understanding. But I feel like kind of street schooled. I just played a million gigs and learned how to kind of box. I've made the analogy before of feeling like a boxer in the ring, and when you're in the corner of that noisy party Irish bar in, let's say, Sarnia, Ontario or something, and it's just you and a guitar and nobody cares, and you're setting up and nobody cares, and there's a sort of like fighter's instinct of like, no, I'm gonna make these people care, I'm gonna make these people pay attention. And I feel like at all points there was an element of sort of performance or theatricality to what I was learning, and I was picking up these little tips of how to grab people's attention. And at all times there's an element of like, I'm giving people an honest thing that I'm doing, but also I feel like I kind of did things in a weird backwards sense, that I learned how to grab people's attention, I learned how to perform, and then I started kind of realizing later on why I was making music. I just wanted to be a part of this. I mean, I'm sure people in this room feel the same way, especially when you're young. There's like this magical orb of floating coolness that the world of music exists in. And it's like this thing, and it's so exciting, and it's larger than life, and it involves sweaty bars and, Jack Kerouac stories of just being out there on the road and what that means. And I just wanted to be a part of that. And I didn't really know why. Like, I didn't really now at this point I have a bit of more focus to why I'm making music, but at that time I feel like it was largely just like, I don't want to say selfish, but just sort of like I was trying to fulfill something in me that it was all process, you know. I feel like anyways, I'm tanging.
That's okay. That initially though, at this stage of being 18, 19, going to school and getting gigs, you weren't even in Sarnia. You were
No.
in the Lower Mainland. What kind of gigs were you getting?
Open mics, yeah. And my first paid gig was at the Media Club in Vancouver,
Right.
and I was opening up for some, I can't even remember who now, but you know, I remember making $30 and being like, sweet, like, I just made $30, like, playing music, you know. And there was one time when I was really broke, and I was looking for serving jobs or busing jobs anywhere, and my dad said, well, you play guitar, go sit in front of the London Drugs or something. And I went and I made $40 in an hour in front of the London Drugs in Kerrisdale in Vancouver. And I was like, over the moon, you know. It was my wife's an actor, and I think that's a way harder gig because you're dependent on casting directors and people to let you do what you do. Whereas I feel like there's a sort of...
You can't go act in front of London.
No, like doing like monologues. Out damn spot, yeah. Monologues in front of London Drugs doesn't really do the same thing. I mean, maybe it would. Maybe it would blow people's minds. I don't know. But I feel like with music, you can self-propel yourself. Like at the very least, you can busk or something like that. I don't want it. That sounds diminutive about busking, because that's a real art. But I think that there's something about music where even people who don't appreciate music might enjoy it. And so you can kind of self-do it. You can book your own gigs. You can. I mean, at this point, you can put your own music from your laptop up onto iTunes. You know, and there's more room, I think, in this format than there is.
You said that this was kind of a shapeless direction for you. All that you knew was that you wanted to get as close to the musical circus as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, you were 19 to 20, and you put together your own record and pressed it and tried to sell it. Why and how naive were you?
So naive. Oh my God. I feel like I did so many things that I would not have the balls to do today. Mm-hmm. And just like walking into a bank and asking for like a line of credit and getting it, you know, and like I was like, I don't know what bank manager gives like a 21-year-old kid $10,000 of credit to go make a record, you know, as everyone.
I think they want to know.
Yeah. Well, their name is Cindy. Yeah, I mean, to me that's amazing. I feel like I did so many things that were just naively, blindly optimistic and just ballsy that. I mean, I'm really proud that I did some of those things. I'm really proud that I drove from Vancouver to Austin alone in my mom's Subaru to go and play South by Southwest the very first time. And when I got, this is funny, I was driving through New Mexico into El Paso, and there was this terrible storm. And during that storm, I kind of started thinking about a lot of things, and one of them being like tornadoes, and I didn't know like where the tornadoes happen. And from that came the song Road Regrets, which ended up kind of being like a big song for us. And getting to Austin, and I was trying to be in touch with the people that I was going to meet, and I knew that there was like a Canadian Blast barbecue, or there was something, and I didn't know what that was. I'd never been to any of this. And being like so excited that I was going to South by Southwest, and I was going to go to this barbecue, and I was going to meet someone, and they were going to blow my mind, and I was going to get discovered, kind of thing. And I got stuck in traffic, and I missed the thing, and I got to the hotel room, and it was the wrong hotel because it wasn't this hotel. It was, it wasn't the Marriott Plaza. It was the Marriott Suites, or it was the Marriott whatever. And like I got to the wrong place, and I got to the hotel, and my key didn't work. And I was holding like all these bags and merch and guitars, and I was tired, and I'd been driving for like 70 fucking hours, and it was just like this ridiculous thing. And I got there and I kind of like wept. Like I just kind of like put my back against the door and I was like, oh my God, you have to be kidding me, you know? And that shit makes you stronger. Like it makes it, and it makes you appreciate it. It makes you appreciate it when you get to the point where people know your music and you can show up, and like the idea that we can sell tickets to a show in advance, that we don't even have just walk up anymore, you know, is like, blows my mind. Like it's amazing. And I can't ever take for granted the fact that we have an audience now, and we can tour around the world, and you know, the whole band, like, well, most of the band, you know, makes a living just playing music, which is like, already you're in the 1%. Like that's a miracle if you can make a living doing this.
What year was that South by Southwest experience?
Oh, it's 2007.
That recently, 7 years ago.
Yeah, maybe 2000. No, it's 2007. Yeah.
Okay. And yet there were things along the way that led to you, like not anybody gets asked to perform at South by Southwest and book. You had persisted. You met people. You made connections along the way. You used an analogy when we were talking last week about the music business just being this long hallway filled with doors, and that you were determined to knock on every single one of those doors.
Yeah, I felt like for a long time I was kind of like I had a key and this like Shining-esque long hallway, and it's like foggy at the end of it. There's not really an end in sight. And I felt like I was just unlocking every door on either side of the hallway as I slowly walked through it. And then slowly, every now and then, you'd hear a voice calling because somebody had walked through the door from the other side. And it was sort of like I was filling up the hallway with people who were slowly coming into the hallway. And that really helped me, that sort of image in my head of like, you know, you're playing for 4 people in Cranbrook, BC. Awesome. Like, let's make memories tonight, that kind of thing, you know? And it was sort of an appreciation for every little thing that came my way. And there, you know, there's dark moments, and there's moments where you doubt yourself and you're thinking, can I do this? Am I making the right decisions? Does my music suck? And you know, I think it takes an absurd sort of gumption to just do it anyways.
Yeah, gumption and perhaps some happy accidents.
Mm-hmm.
And on the gumption side of things, you talked about your first experience coming to a BreakOut West conference in Vancouver in 2005.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I had just finished my first record, recording it. I had it like burned onto CDRs kind of thing. I applied to BreakOut West because it was in Vancouver that year, where I'm from, and I didn't get accepted to play, but I was convinced by somebody to kind of buy a delegate badge. So I borrowed some money from my mom, I think, and I bought a delegate badge, and I kind of came to things like this, and I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what the difference between a label and an agent and a distributor, and you know, people are using terms like digital aggregation, and I was just like, what the fuck is all of this stuff? And but I had like a stack of burned CDs, and I was kind of going around, and there's probably a bunch of people in this room that were very much remember me at that time, you know, just passing out demos and trying to meet people and all that kind of stuff. And I think that going to that conference, and not even playing it, but just sort of being there to try and muster up some kind of, you know, knowledge that I existed was a turning point for me in realizing that A, there's a lot of bands out there, and B, like, you have to kind of treat it like a business. And that's a touchy thing, because the business should never supersede the art. The art has to stand alone. And I think that that's a scary thing about these conferences, is that in me as well, like it inspires this thing of like, okay, I've got to have a marketing plan, got to have the right photos, got to meet this person, got to get in the hands of the radio tracker, or get the right publicist, and those things are true. Like you have to have a business sense about it. You have to pretend that you're opening a restaurant, and if you want this restaurant to succeed, you have to be in it 16 hours a day, making sure that the floor is mopped and that the font on the menu looks amazing, and the chef is great, and you know the sandwich board outside looks cool, and it's all these things. Like, you need to think of it in that way. But if the food sucks, your restaurant sucks. And that's the thing, is that you can dress it up in a million ways, but if the business ever means more to you than the reason why you're doing it, or the art itself, then you've lost the plot, and then you're trying to get famous. You're not trying to have a body of work, and those are two very different things. And I feel like I kind of came to that discovery in the process, where at the beginning, I don't know if I wanted to be famous, but I just wanted to be a part of it, like I said before. And then we had toured for like 6 straight years, and I was exhausted, and at the end of 2012, we decided we were going to take a couple of years off of touring, the band and I. And in that time, 2013 was a really important year for me, because I started to kind of be like, okay, we have this audience, you know, we have unbelievable doors opened for us. We're the luckiest people on the planet. What do I want to do with this? Like, you know, in 30 years, how do I want to look back at now? And body of work just kept coming in my mind. And I think that those are the best artists, the artists that just do things because they do them, and they do them for their whole lives. And, you know, whether or not it gets absorbed by mainstream culture or a larger audience, that's kind of like magic. If that happens, that's amazing. But the people that I look up to and the people that I want to be like are those magnets, those people who are just these pulsating, kind of like vibrant, full of life, full of art, people who will just proliferate things as long as they live. And another analogy I speak of, when I think of a band, I remember inviting everyone out to my showcases and trying to get agents out and trying to get managers out. And I felt like I was a train, and I was at like a platform. And as soon as everybody got on board, man, I was gonna just play the best darn show, and everyone was gonna love me, and it was gonna be great. And that, I realized later on that it's not about that. It's about your train should be barreling down, doing everything all the time, and just being this like magnetic force of momentum. Because nobody wants to get on a train that's begging to be gotten on. And people want to get on a train that's already moving. And so it's about your band, your thing, being this hub of intensity and chaos and beauty and love. And as you proceed, people are going to want to be a part of it. And the industry the industry hears about where the kids are going, you know, and they hear about what shows are getting full of people and who's got a buzz online. The industry will come to you, and you should always, I think that there's no reason to fear the industry, because there's a sort of fear that the industry will use you and eat you up. And it will only do that if that's what you ask for. If what you're asking for is to be made famous by the mechanics of the machine, then the mechanics of the machine can crush you in the same way. Whereas if what you're doing is a steady and slow development and rise based on you know, love and passion and art, the industry can help you, but it can never break you. It can never destroy you. And that's what I, you know, that's what I want to do. That's what I hope other people want to do, is just the steady rise.
Well, you're on that path, and thanks for that. That's a pretty impassioned statement on behalf of putting art first.
Mm-hmm. Big time.
Putting good cooking first.
Yeah.
And your
don't let the Bene suck, because that's going to be the marquee of it.
Yeah.
If your eggs Bene sucks, you know.
There you go. Well, your eggs Benedict was getting better by 2005, 2006, and despite the fact you were weeping outside the unopenable door in some unnamed Marriott in Austin.
Yeah.
In 2007. Later that year, things got pretty good for you with Postcards and Daydreaming. File Under Music, which was a Vancouver label manager, essentially one person, picked it up. But there was also a licensing deal in Australia. Did that, at that point, you know, you've had the low of South by Southwest, and then this kind of kick in the rear, give you a sense that, hey, things are going in the right direction?
Yeah, I think that every time I felt like there was always one more thing to grab onto, you know, in those sort of most desperate moments of like, this is never going to work. There was always just like one hopeful thing to grasp onto, and I kept getting, at that time I was traveling alone and playing alone. There was a lot of brilliant things coming my way, like tours in Australia. And I have a lot of people to thank, you know, a lot of people who gave me the benefit of the doubt. And I feel like rather than being in the right place at the right time, it's being in the right places at the right times 1,000 times in a row. And always having the willingness to accept that challenge every single time and to step up to the plate. I've got a little kid now, and we said to our doctor, man, this is so exhausting. I can't imagine what it would be like to have twins. John has twins. And our doctor said, yeah, but people who have twins come in here and they say, I can't imagine what it would be like to have triplets. And people step up to the plate, you know, and it's like every time you have an opportunity, a show that seems really scary and exciting and so from whatever agency is going to be there, and man, maybe they'll just love you. Maybe they will and maybe they won't, but you step up to the plate and you give everything you have. And the worst thing is entitlement. If you start feeling entitled to that veggie tray, if you start feeling entitled to as many beers as you can possibly drink, someone has to go buy that fucking veggie tray. It's like someone went to the store and bought it. It did not just magically appear. And I think it's important to remain, you know, it's especially like I remember, and I was probably culprit to this too. You know, you kind of in your own city, as you start to get a name, a little bit of a buzz, you start to feel like a big fish in a little pond, and you kind of start to get a bit of a swagger to you, you know. And then you go down to Austin and you realize that there's 1,500 bands and they're probably all better than you. And you know, it's good to have your ass handed to you a couple of times to remember your humility.
Keep you humble.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he didn't touch the fruit plate in the green room before we came in.
I just had a Bene, so you know.
What did you say? 1,000 things happened at 1,000 times all at the same time. Say that again.
Well, being in the right place at the right time.
That leads me to Grant Lawrence's Christmas party.
Yeah.
In 2008. Grant Lawrence, for those who don't know, is a DJ and radio personality on CBC Radio 3, based in Vancouver. Used to be in a fantastic band called The Smugglers in the 80s and 90s.
I went to high school with Nardwar.
And went to high school with Nardwar, exactly. Grant's an influential tastemaker. Dan went to a Christmas party at Grant's house.
Yeah. So I had kind of peripherally met Grant at this point. I didn't know him very well. But he invited me to his kind of annual Christmas party at his house. And Said the Whale, who were just kind of getting a big buzz in Vancouver at the time, he invited them to play like a couple of songs. And it's kind of cool because, you know, here Grant invites interesting people to his party. You have no idea who's going to be in the room, and he's a very connected guy. And so Said the Whale played, and they did a great job. And they said to Grant, you should let Dan play some songs. Is Dan going to play? And he was like, no, that's fine. You know, we've had our music, like we'll just put on the thing. And they were persistent, and they said, no, you gotta let our friend Dan play. And so I went up and I played a couple songs, and it was sort of like, you know, I mentioned before, the boxer instinct, the fighter instinct. And I was like, okay, here's this noisy room full of people chatting away. Grant got their attention. I had the benefit of the doubt of a moment of silence before everyone went back to chatting. And it was just sort of like game on. And it was great. You know, there was one of those moments where by the end of it, the whole place is erupting in song and singing along, and everyone's having a moment, and it's really beautiful. And then Grant talked about that moment on his radio show and on his podcast, and as soon as the record was out, he was ready to flog it. It was, you know, I had earned a champion in that moment, and you can never expect when those things are going to happen. You can never predict them, and you can never expect them. But when they do, it's amazing.
And the key thing was you recognized it for what it was and answered the bell, to use the boxing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things I said to Dan, because we talked on the phone in advance of this last week, was, how did you get Grant Lawrence to talk about you for what seemed like all of 2009? Because I was a religious Radio 3 podcast listener. That podcast is no longer available, unfortunately.
And then Dan Mangan.
Exactly, yeah. And you were in every single episode, 52 of them. Yeah. And I'm sure that had something to do with it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is it all...
You were on the R330 all that year as well.
And it all has something to do with it. I think that's the other thing, is like, it's everything. It's not about having a great show, it's about having people care about you. And it's about people making a connection. You know, you can spend $500,000 on a marketing budget to get you on posters, and that could get you some buzz, that could get you some blog hype, and that could get you some listeners. But that's not what this is about. It's about building connections between you and other people, and they will believe in you and they will support you on an emotional level if they actually believe, if they see you on stage and they feel like they have an understanding of who you are, not just a sort of veiled cool idea of who you are, but actually like an honest vision of who you are, then they will believe in you, and then they will tell their friends, and they will buy a t-shirt, and they are you, you know. It's I was saying to someone the other day, it's like you have to be on all the time. Like every time you're talking to a journalist, every time you're at the merch stand, and it becomes a thing not about doing that for a means to an end so that you get an audience, because that's how you build an audience. That's how you live a fucking life, is just to be great, be generous, be thoughtful, like enjoy the people around you, and bring that philosophy into your music and your art and your business ethos, and you know, work with people that you would like to have over for dinner. You know, if someone gives you the creeps, they're a creep. Don't worry about it. Move on. Work with someone else. You know, stand up for yourself.
Well, let's talk about who you're working with now. You made a step in 2009 to engage the machine a little bit more, as it were, by deciding to work with Arts and Crafts, which is a relatively big independent label in North America, Toronto-based, but
sure.
You know, through several of the acts that it's worked with previously, it has a golden reputation, and the two of you chose to work together. Tell us how that came about, and what was it about their honesty and being on with you that made you...
Well, I knew almost every record that they'd put out. I was a big fan of the label, and honestly, I think that my biggest asset when it came to Arts and Crafts was the assumption that they would never work with me. So I had this sort of like, when I actually contacted a friend at Arts and Crafts that I kind of met briefly at a party. I didn't know him that well, about another manager. And I was like, okay, I'm thinking about working with this other manager. Do you guys know them? Do you have any dirt? Do you have any praise? And I was just sort of doing some digging. And they said, well, but, you know, you should talk to Kieran, our GM, before you do anything. So I was in Amsterdam, and I'm on Skype, and in my head, I'm thinking, like, Arts and Crafts is cool. They're just like this amazing, cool hub of creativity out of Toronto, and they've somehow managed to mix great music with great business, and it all seems to be working. And I kind of remember feeling like, I'm not cool. I'm like this folky guy from Vancouver. They probably want nothing to do with me. And so that sort of nothing to lose kind of attitude. And we came into the conversation, and I just told them kind of what was going on in my life, and I was booking tours in Europe and doing different things, and I wasn't making much money, but I was starting to make a living, and I think I had just recently at that point stopped serving tables, and I had made my own online store. I was selling 10, 20 records a week just over mail order from the PayPal thing. And I was going down to the post office with a stack of CDs, and I kind of was like, I said to them, I was like, well, to be honest, guys, like, I'm just barely making a living. I don't want to divvy that up. I'm not so sure I want to, maybe I don't need a manager. Maybe I can just do this. And I think that sort of playing hard to get helped that situation. Because, like I said before, nobody wants to get on a train that's begging to be gotten on. And I was thinking about management. Management's like a marriage. Like, you're going to be talking to this person like every day, especially at the beginning. And would you walk down the street going like, anybody want to marry me? Like, I'll marry anyone. I'll marry anyone who wants to marry me. You know, I promise I'm cool. Like, no, people want to marry people for a reason. And your manager should believe in you. And your manager should get you artistically and have a vision. And it doesn't matter if they're super connected. They just have to be smart and thoughtful and impassioned and get you.
What made you realize they got you?
Well, because one of the things they said is, we don't want to screw up your mojo. We don't have a thing that we do that we know is the best thing. We just have been trying to figure it out along the way. So why don't we combine forces, and we'll take the thing that you're doing and we'll add the help that we can, and like maybe we can make something beautiful together. And that thing was so great because they weren't going, we're gonna make you a star, kid. You know, it was like, it was so open, and it was so unassumptive about what was going to happen. And I really respected that. And my working relationship with them is amazing, you know. And it's like any organization. Once you get inside of it, you see all the holes, and you see that it's imperfect too. And you know, there are things that they could do better, but they're good people, and they're doing it for the right reasons, and they have good business sense, and they have good taste, and I trust them. I think that's the biggest thing. I trust them. I trust them to be in a room when I'm not there speaking for me.
Right. And you don't worry that maybe they don't pick up their socks in the bedroom all the time.
No, and I don't worry that they're going to say something that's going to make me look amateur or foolish or something like that. Yeah.
They get the big picture.
Yeah, and the long game.
Yeah.
You know, they understand that I want to be doing this for, 30 more years. So.
To have someone who will advocate on your behalf without fail. Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about where you are now, artistically and career-wise. You've taken some time out, started a bit of a family,
Well,
had a son.
Anything less than twins seems like easy peasy, you know.
Oh Fortune was such a big record for you. It seemed to take you to a level at which you're able to headline a night at the Winnipeg Folk Festival, or play in the ultimate soft cedar venue in your hometown and sell it out. Those are things that you could have only dreamed of as a kid playing poker when pretending to read Thomas Hardy as an English literature student at UBC. Yeah. And
Yeah, when I said I read a lot of books, that I read like the first half of a lot of books.
He's a poker hound. I learned this from a wonderful, by the way, I got to plug them, CBC Backstage Pass episode that they did on Dan. About
Foosball, actually. Yeah. I'm a decent poker player, but I'm a very good foosball player, thanks to university.
In that Backstage Pass episode too, it was just before you played the Orpheum in Vancouver, and you said that you were at a point at which you were getting up and having achieved something and wondering what's next, what's the next challenge. So the obvious question here is 2 years later is what's next, and what's the next challenge?
So yeah, we had a couple of years to sort of rest and regroup. We just changed the moniker from just Dan Mangan to Dan Mangan and Blacksmith. Because the band, I've been touring with these guys for like 5 years basically, and they've given me so much of their time and their energy, and they're just phenomenal musicians, all of them, and much stronger musicians, I believe, than myself. And it seemed weird showing up in venues and the marquee said Dan Mangan, when it had clearly become a sort of community sense. I think that I still held the ace in a lot of decision makings, but it was sort of, it had become a group. It felt like a group. And so I did this Simon Pegg film recently with Jesse Zubat. Actually, Jesse Zubat, who produced Tanya Tagak's record that just won the Polaris Prize. Jesse is a genius. This guy is amazing, and he's so humble, a very unassuming character. But if you ever get a chance to do anything with Jesse Zubat, just do it. So Jesse and I worked on the score, And then we jumped right into making a new album. We're announcing the album in like a week and a half or something like that, and we're gonna. I'm so excited. We jumped right out of the soundtrack, which is the hardest project I've ever worked on. I was used to kind of getting my way creatively and stuff, and here I had to serve somebody else's vision, serve somebody else's baby, and that was really humbling. Like I kind of, I'd work on something for 3 days and I'd send it to the director and he'd look at it in between setups in China or something where they were shooting and he'd be like, nah. And I'd be like, fuck. So that was really good for me to kind of, good for my ego to sort of have a bit of like a, hey, like you're part of a process here. This isn't about you. And so going into the record, body of work keeps coming up to me. Body of work is this term. It's in my head. It's important to me. We've made we'd made 3 records. What was the 4th one going to be? And what are the rest of them going to be? And I just felt like at this point more than ever, it's like all through my 20s, I've been mustering a lot of feelings about the world, about hypocrisies, and about in myself and in society, about history and how we think about history, and all of the things about honesty and how we're so afraid of the highs and lows, and so we've kind of like mashed everything into this nice middle ground where everyone feels comfortable. And if your kid acts a certain way, you're supposed to put them on medication, and it's like I felt like I had something to say. And so this record that we made feels like the strongest piece of work that I've ever touched. And I feel like I can brag about it because I feel like it's disconnected from me at this point. It's like I can sit back and go like, yeah, at that moment, this group of people made this thing. And it's kind of about that. It's about embracing the highs and the lows, because numbness, there's this idea that, this sort of fog of bullshit in the world is safer and easier, and everyone's already there, so you might as well just join the party. And the truth is that when you're in the fog, when you're in the sort of sedative numbness of bullshit, it makes you more isolated. You think that if you join the crowd, that you'll be surrounded by other people who feel the same numbness, and it makes you more dangerous. It makes you more desperate. And so the record kind of has a slightly more political or social philosophy than anything that I've ever done.
I heard that last night. You played 3 songs, 16 Mouthpiece and Vessels. Is Vessels on the album too?
Vessel's on the record.
Okay.
And Vessel is also on the film score.
Yeah. Okay. And 16, you actually reference Marie Antoinette, who said, "Let them eat cake," famously. In fact, I think you've taken that line and used it in the song. And I heard anger.
I had to contact Marie Antoinette's publishing.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's public domain now. Yeah. That's what the revolution was all about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. A lot of people lost their heads for my ability to use that one.
But there's honesty and anger and social commentary that's very direct in the way that you haven't done before. Are you anxious about how people might respond to that? Perhaps.
I also feel like I give less shits about what people think. I think my whole life, I've gotten a reputation for being a really nice guy, and the truth is that, I really wanted everyone to think I was a nice guy, and so I was a nice guy, and I think I still am a nice guy, but I don't care as much. Like I can't say that I don't care at all. I think people I don't give a shit what people think, and everyone gives a little bit of a shit what people think, but I give less shits now than I ever did, and I think that just comes with age, and I think that it's funny because you would think that it comes with bravado or confidence. It doesn't. It comes with humility to not feel like you're important enough to give a shit. And I totally lost my train of thought.
That's okay. You were not giving shits about what people think of the record and how they'll react to you taking a bold step.
Yeah, it's like, and not being defensive about it, because the second it's like the second you have something to prove that you're important, then anytime you think somebody might not think you're important or cool or talented or funny or anything, then you get defensive about it. And you're like, no, but I am, because you're trying to convince yourself that you are those things. And the truth is that if you just let yourself be a blank slate all the time and approach every moment like it's brand new and you can be whatever you want, then it's like you don't have anything to prove. You're not defensive about anything, because it's like, well, in the cosmos of everything that's ever happened, and dinosaurs and Napoleon and it's like other planets, like we're particles, you know, we're nothing. We're less than the blink of an eye in the whole scheme of anything that ever has been. So why get uppity about your importance when you're not important, you know? And that doesn't mean that we can't be important to each other, that we can't inspire each other, because we're all on the same, we're living together right now. But in the greater scheme, you know, we're nothing. It's beautiful. Perspective.
I've asked him. He will not tell us the name of the new record.
Soon.
He will not tell us when it's even coming out. Just as vague sort of week and a half.
It'll be coming out in January, but we're doing a full announce very soon. I just can't blow the title now, because then it'll, you know.
Yeah, no, understood. But so I'm going to press you for details of other things, and this is at the behest of Melissa, who's an event organizer here. In the background vocals to Vessels, some guy named Dave Grohl is apparently singing.
Yeah.
And she is so. I want to know, how'd that come about? Did you actually meet him? Were you in the same room?
Yeah. Dave Grohl's amazing. That guy is like, he's a gem, and he's got it figured out. I mean, this guy is more famous than almost anyone, and we got to his house, and he was wearing like cargo shorts and like a ripped Sears Repairman t-shirt. He's eating a microwave burrito, and he's like, hey, you know, and it's like he's like the nicest, most unassuming, down-to-earth dude.
So back up a bit.
Okay, so
how did you invite to Dave Grohl's house?
Yeah, okay, preamble. So the director of the film I was working on is good friends with Dave, and so he had asked Dave, hey, can you be involved in the film? And I was just the lucky person who happened to be doing music for the film, and I got to be caught up in the middle. And so we played Dave a bunch of music, and we showed him a rough cut of the film. And, you know, lucky me, the song that he chose to be a part of was the same song that's going to be on our record, and it all kind of went from there. And Dave Grohl cameos on stuff all the time. I mean, it's sort of like those in the know that he played drums on No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age, and he played drums on Tenacious D, and he did this on that. And so he bounces around. And you'll notice that no one ever promotes it that way. It's never Queens of the Stone Age featuring Dave Grohl. And so his team of people, and rightfully so, they have asked us to be very careful about that. And just to be like, you know, let it be an under the surface Dave Grohl's on your record, but, you know, we're purposefully not promoting it like a featuring Dave Grohl kind of thing. And we need to respect the fact that, you know, he is just on another stratosphere.
Sure.
You know, John and I were talking earlier about how there are bands here this weekend that, you know, the weight of their band name kind of carries a lot in these rooms and in this hotel right now. But like, you know, you go to get your hair cut somewhere, and like your hairdresser's never heard of Arcade Fire. They don't, you know, the woman down the hall from you in your apartment, she's never heard of Coldplay. Like, it's a very niche world that we're in here, and I think that remembering that helps. But Dave Grohl, I mean, he's just.
Everybody does.
Yeah. So we're just being very careful about it, and we're being respectful.
And I just wanted to ask about that detail, because it's cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Are there any other? I mean, it's you told me that it's essentially a band record, a Dan Mangan and Blacksmith record. That there's a core of about 7 of you on this thing.
Yeah.
Any other special guests or the things that you want to hint at?
Well, we got Bob Marley on a track. I have to give a big shout out to Bob Hunka over there, who was a very early adopter. And little like, you know, like there's a promoter in Edmonton named Steve Durpak. I don't know if he's here, or here this weekend. You know, he brought me to Edmonton like 5 times and lost money on the shows, and just kept bringing me back because he believed in it, and like little things like that. For a couple of years, I was working with Shannon Martin, who was kind of wandering in and out of the room earlier. She's here this weekend. She was working File Under Music. I think she was kind of like the first like management, you know, kind of like team thing that I had going on. And there was sort of a mixture of I'm on my own, and then I was working with Filament Music, and then slowly we got Ken Beatty, great publicist who might be here, Killbeat Music, and he's been doing our PR ever since then and stuff like that. When I talk to bands that are just starting out, I always mention the publicist. You can hire a publicist, and if they get your music, they can do a great job. You can't hire a manager in the same way. Like a management relationship or an agent relationship or a label relationship has to be like more of an emotional sort of like artful thing, a sense of like we're in this together. And the publicist has to get what you're doing, but you can hire a publicist in a different way. And so I say to young bands, like if you can afford a publicist to just get you out the door, get you like a handful of pull quotes to put on your bio, that makes a big difference. And it's tough because I remember sending out my first record to every Arts Weekly and stuff like that, and couldn't get a thing.
Yeah, if I could just expand on that as an experienced music journalist, you hire a publicist not necessarily because he or she is the biggest fan of your music or your art. You hire him or her or the company because of who they can get you to and the contacts that they have. You're hiring a contact list, you're hiring someone with relationships. Ken Beatty is originally from Winnipeg. He's a guy whose calls I'll take, and no one talks on the phone anymore. Right? That's the kind of thing that you're hiring when you're hiring a publicist.
And it's like you can get a grant to pay for a publicist. You know, you can't get a grant to work with a manager, that kind of thing. So it's like in a very tangible, like sort of business sense thing, a publicist is incredibly valuable.
Any other questions? Over here. You may have to come over here.
So earlier you talked about figuring out why you wanted to make music. So I want to ask you, why are you doing it?
Well, I thank you for asking that. That's a great question. I feel like music has an ability to transcend language, in that when you're talking with people about life and experiences, often words fail. Like you can't articulate the thing that's inside you. And even the way that we think is engineered by the language that we speak. So we think in the language that we know. And so if you come from an entirely different language, you literally think differently about things. And so I feel like music has an ability to transcend above that. And I feel like creative people in general, whether you're a playwright or a sculptor or a musician or whatever, you have these feelings about the world and you need to express them to kind of get it off your chest. And you send a smoke signal up in the air and you sort of go, I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but this is how I feel. And you throw it up there. And like miles away, somebody else sees that smoke signal and they go, fuck, I've always felt that way and I've never said it like that. And even if the two people never actually physically meet, it's like both of them are like existentially less alone. You know what I mean? So it's like that connection. I feel like as animals, like we are animals. We're like anytime we kid ourselves that we're not animals, it drives me crazy. And the whole reason why we use voice, like the whole purpose of our vocal cords is to connect, is to feel connection. And then because that makes us able to feel things like love or fear or anger, whatever. And so that sense of connection, I think, is why art is powerful, because it transcends social dynamics, it transcends limitations of other elements of how we exist. And so I think I sort of started to make decisions about making music that are more in line with that and less in line with wanting to be a part of the big thing of music. Because once you get inside something, it's like earlier I was talking about arts and crafts, and there's this amazing label. But once you get inside of an organization, you start to see where it's not perfect, and before it used to be this magical thing. It's the same thing with the world of music, you know, and that's why you have people, you know, who are incredibly successful and have like horrible addictions because there's a disconnect. They're seeing the success, but they don't feel good. And so I think that there's it's like once you get inside of any kind of infrastructure or organization, you start to see how human and imperfect it is. And I think that embracing the imperfect nature of everything is much better than trying to imagine that it is perfect, if only it could be perfect for a moment. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
Thanks, Dan. I think we have time for maybe one more. Is that working?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody? Yeah.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Dan. Really been enjoying